live from the Real Guppy Dockside Learning and Multimedia Center. It's the Real Angler Podcast with Community Kevin Brannon, brought to you by AFTCO Fishing Apparel and Tackle, designed to perform. Channel Islands Sport Fishing, offering deep-sea fishing on quality sport fishing charter boats, and more. Costa Sunglasses. Discover life's greatest adventures with Costa. See what's out there. Daiwa. If you want innovation and quality in your fishing products, Daiwa has what you need. And now, here's your host, Community Kevin Brannon. Today's guest, Shannon Riley, animal trainer and behavior consultant with Truly Force-Free Animal Training.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you guys are watching or listening at. Community Kev, we've been off for a couple weeks, man, between my travel schedule and Scotty's travel schedule now that he's retired, living his best life. We missed a couple weeks, but I think it's going to be like that this year. The need and the growth of Community Kev and traveling is taking us places. I like to see Scotty traveling and enjoying retirement. So, you know, we might, how many did we get last year, Scotty?
35, 40, something like that.
So it's pretty, maybe one a month we might have missed, you know, on average, something like that. But anyway, we're back in the studio and we've been doing more shoots from right here because it's just more spacious out here in the Dockside Learning Center in the classroom. We got Barry here. Again, where I got Barry was from this Sacramento show, and we weren't able to go this year because we went to the SHOT Show in Vegas, right? So again, expanding out. But this is Barry, and this is our mascot. We're explaining that to our guests. So let me introduce our guest. Gary just wanted to say good morning and how you doing, the Caliente Cal Bear. Move him out of the way so there's a black guest. This is a good friend of ours, Shannon Riley, with Truly Force-Free Animal Training. But she is one of our friends from, we talk about our network as far as the Chamber of Commerce goes. She's in 2 Chamber of Commerce that we're in. We had a couple different booths in the same expos together. So I've seen her grind. I've seen her out getting it. I follow her on Facebook. And she doesn't just network with the Chamber of Commerce. She's actually an ambassador. And she got ambassador of the Millennium. Was it like a week, a month or two ago?
December.
Yeah. Because how much effort she puts in on top of just running her own business and some other work that she does with trauma classes we're going to talk about. But it's our guest today is Shannon Riley. Again, she's in, because you know people, the reason we say it that way, a lot of people that listen to this, some of them are entrepreneurs and dreamers. And maybe your story could help inspire them for them to take that leap of faith, whether they got a full-time job now and just want to dabble in to it, to the passion and things that they care about to make a living in an occupation and do some meaningful work. But besides that, again, you're out hustling that. People always want to ask, like, do those networking events work? And does it pay off, right? So we'll talk about some of that because, again, you get to see the inner workings, not just as a member of a chamber, but, you know, the importance of the work that chambers do as a whole and other businesses that give up their time to help other businesses grow. So, let me go ahead and jump in. You could tell the people kind of, you know, about your business, and I'm going to ask you just a few questions. We don't really script it, and we'll just kind of go off our conversation as we get it. But I was on her podcast, about 2 months ago?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, right? I think that's, And
we've been trying to get her to a podcast. We've been trying to get her to come fishing. She says she has a fishing pole that she wants to use.
I know. I need to learn how to put the
Did you bring it?
No, I should have, but I know. I have to learn how to put the reel back on the rod. They're separated.
All right, we'll show you. We got some reels right there and some rods. So maybe we'll give you a little demo after this to show.
I know, and I want to go fishing on the pier, but I always teach agility on Sunday, so I know.
That's this Sunday.
I know. It doesn't work out on the Sundays I have off usually.
Well, you got VIP, you know? We do some other days during the week that maybe we can get you out on when we do other groups. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about what got you into, tell the listeners, we like to tell the passion story, right? So as we talk about your business too, but what made you want to go into that line as occupation on what you do? Do you see a need? So first, go ahead, just kind of explain, what you do.
I have always loved animals, always. And so when I was graduating high school, which was Buena, so local, I said, I really want to do something with animals. I was interested in behavior. The only thing I understood, though, behavior was Shamu, you know, and but I knew I didn't really want to do that fully. So my guidance counselor said, well, the only thing you can do is be a veterinarian. So I went to Sonoma State planning to be a vet, kind of freaked out about halfway through and went, I don't want to go to vet school. But I was working in zoos at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I found out that there were vet techs. So I met someone who was a registered veterinary technician, and I found out that I could go to school. So I finished my bachelor's and then went back to school and got an AA in veterinary technology. So, and it was a 2-hour commute. I lived in Napa, California at the time, and I had to go to Sacramento, so every day.
Wow.
And then I would work at the vet hospital that I was working at. I would go in the morning to school. I'd leave at 6, get there at 8, go to 12, leave at 12, come back. At 2 o'clock, I would go work.
What did you do that for?
That's for 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah,
Wow.
I could only do it because I was in my 20s. Couldn't do that anymore. 4 hours of driving every day now would be exhausting. So I got my degree, and I remember my AA, passed my boards, and became a registered veterinary technician. And as soon as I passed my boards, I started teaching puppy classes in the vet hospital that I worked at, because I knew I loved medicine, but I also still wanted to do behavior. And by then I was starting to learn more about behavior. And after I got my license, gave me more, I didn't have to drive 4 hours every day. So I started doing continuing education, and I started learning about behavior. And I went to a conference, a veterinary conference, that said, because at that time everyone used choke chains and pinch collars and shock collars. That was the only option.
Shock collars.
And I went to one who said, when you have aggressive dogs, it was a veterinary behaviorist that spoke, Karen Overall, who's still my idol. She said, aggression doesn't treat aggression. And that I started learning how to do positive force-free, or positive training. It wasn't fully force-free then, but positive training to help the dogs that were coming into the vet hospital with separation anxiety, aggression, fear. And then I was also doing puppy class, because puppies need that socialization period before they're fully vaccinated. So before 4 months is when they should really be meeting other dogs, meeting other people, going to new places. Before they finish their vaccines.
Isn't there something, is that just pit bulls or something like that, there you weren't allowed to, you weren't supposed to be around other dogs if you smell them?
That's because of parvo. So parvo is a virus that is spread fecal orally, which means that a dog defecates on the ground that has parvo. Even if the feces is gone, the spores of the virus can still live there. And then another dog comes and walks around and steps in that area, and then maybe goes and licks their paws, and then they have gotten the virus. So puppies have some immunity from mom, but then it starts to drop off. And so they go to the vet to give these vaccines to keep the immune system up. And during that period of time, we don't know when exactly mom's antibodies are going to drop off and when exactly the vaccine is going to hit. So they recommend you don't take them to places that they could get exposed to parvo. So that's like public parks. You may not go out on some streets where there could be unvaccinated dogs. But the way to fix that is safe socialization. So like I have a training center in Ventura that is bleached before every class. So puppy class is on Wednesday, because we bleach it Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. So the puppies can come in. There's not going to be parvo on the ground. And plus all the dogs that come in the center are vaccinated. So it's a safe way for them to meet other puppies and other dogs. And then they play, they learn basics like sit, down, come, stay. And then they also see all the different people. So there's men and women, and sometimes people have kids. So they get all that in a safe way. And then the ways they can do it at home is go to friends' houses, go to families that have vaccinated dogs that are tolerant of puppies, because you don't want them, talking about trauma, we don't want them to be traumatized by a dog. And then taking them in the car, and having people come to your house. And if you take them to the store, you put them in a cart, with a towel in the cart, so they can still experience the world before their brain changes from being open and elastic to I'm a little bit more fearful. And so the first 4 to 6 months ish is socialization. So that's when they're most likely to take things in and not be afraid. But then a fear period comes right after that. So usually somewhere between 4 and 6 months, there's a fear period, that starts, they kind of overlap. And then 8 to 10 months. I always tell people, just be careful for the first year of a puppy's life, because you never know when these fear periods, because you can't see it in their brain and be like, oh, they're in their fear period now. So just have positive things, because if something scary happens when they are in one of those fear periods, it's like it's sponge. The brain just holds on to it, and it can hold on to it. And then at a year and a half or two, sometimes I'll see dogs that are afraid of something. So say a dog got afraid of a man, because men tend to be sometimes the things dogs are afraid of, because he was a puppy and he got scooped up and was, startled. Man didn't do anything intentionally to hurt the puppy, but it scared the puppy. The puppy's brain might go, men are bad. It could be men with hats are bad. It could be glasses are bad. You don't always know what they paid attention to during that trauma. But then, like at a year and a half, so first they might be just a little shy of men for a little bit, and they might show it in more freeze or flight. And then I see them at a year and a half, and they'll say, my dog barks at every man they see, or is afraid of hats, or is afraid of whatever.
Pillows.
And backpack, exactly. And then if I backtrack when I'm asked them lots of questions, sometimes we figure out, oh yeah, there was this one time my uncle picked up the puppy and he barked and he was scared, but we didn't think anything of it because it was, just a one-off. But
Wow.
that one-off can be traumatic, especially if the puppy is already genetically fearful. So puppies come into my puppy class and they're at 8 weeks showing signs of fear. Those are the ones that need the most prevention, but they might need medication as adults because they're genetically fearful. Then socialization is really important for all puppies, but especially those. And then if they experience any trauma, that's when I see other dogs that are aggressive. But because of I do the medicine part, so being a vet tech, and then also doing training. And I have tons of certifications now because I'm super passionate about becoming more educated and learning different things. I combine both, sometimes the medical part and the behavioral part. So that's how I've been able to combine my passion. I worked as a vet tech for 10 years and I absolutely loved it. But my daughter was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when she was 2. And it was too hard for me to work an 8 to 8 job because they're long hours. As a vet tech, you could work 12-hour days. And I couldn't get her to all of her doctor's appointments and her physical therapy and all of her things. So I had to quit being a vet tech, and then I started doing my own dog training business because it's more flexible hours.
I was engaged to a vet tech, so I heard some stories, but it was a ER vet tech too, so there was like a lot of stuff.
A lot of trauma in that. I was told I would be a good vet tech for ER because I handle emergencies really well, but I didn't want to work overnight hours. I didn't want to work graveyard shift ever. Yeah. That's never been on my to-do list.
It's interesting how much people, they're with their dogs and their pets, especially like where she was at was kind of like Agora Hills area, so people get bit by a rattlesnake, stuff like that, right? Because they're in this areas where they might get bit by some kind of bobcat or something. It was like some different like extreme experiences, but yeah, she would try to explain some of that to me as far as how the animals respond, or if they got bit by another dog and all that stuff. So yeah, I listened to some, but yeah, it's definitely extravagant.
And all that stuff can also cause trauma too. So they have a physical trauma, but then they can also have an emotional trauma. So they get bit by another dog or a coyote or something that looks like a dog. Then after that, they may be reactive, meaning they bark, growl, and lunge on walks when they see a dog. And it can be the trauma. Just like humans respond differently to trauma, they go into fight. Dogs do the same thing: fight, flight, freeze. But we also can go into fidget or fawn. So fidgeting is more like they can't sit still. People think they're hyper, but they never settle down. Almost like extreme ADHD that's unmanageable. And then fawning is like, I want to be in your skin. Like I can't be left alone. A lot of times people see that in smaller dogs, but big dogs can do it too. But those are less recognized signs of fear, or anxiety or stress. But they are also part of how the amygdala, part of the brain, responds to the fear.
That's a lot of
science there.
Wow. Back in our day, we just had like backyard dogs. Just like everybody get a pit bull, everybody get a litter, and you get a dog that you keep to help keep the gas man out of the backyard from turning your meter off. It was more like for my security purposes.
Well, it is true.
And walking around the beach looking cool with a pit bull,
The way people own dogs has really changed. I mean, even I grew up with the dogs slept on my parents' bed. They were house dogs. But most of my friends that had dogs, they were in the backyard. They got fed. You played with them if they were good with kids. You didn't go out in the backyard if they weren't good with kids. And they just did their thing, But dogs are becoming children for people, especially millennials where like we're having a decreased birth rate for human children, but they're having their
babies.
dogs are their and cats or their animals are their babies now.
Yeah, people are like this. I'm a grandparent. Like, yeah, my daughter's dog's coming to visit, and that's what she says. Like, Zeus is your grandpa. Zeus is cool. The only thing about him is like he's a Malamute, so he got all this fur, and if you could tell, like I always try to stay fly, so his fur and my fly wear.
Yeah, dog. Yeah, you don't. I have hair on me almost all the time. Like you can't be worried if you're in my profession, whether it's being a vet tech or a dog trainer. You can't be worried about getting poop, pee, blood, anal glands, hair. Like people will go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, my dog got hair on you," and I look at them like, if that was a problem, I'm in the wrong field.
I think that's the only thing that I trip out on, just because of that part, because of my gear. But we fish, we're exterminators too, so I don't, when it comes to germs and picking up dead rats by their tail or whatever, like I don't care, right? And the fluids and poisons on your fingers and or cutting up fish and whatever.
Fish. I
got scales on my forearms at the gym. I don't even trip on it, but.
I think cleaning a fish is more disgusting than anything I do.
But the gear, I don't know, just like the flow. Like I remember Zeus would come over. I remember went to their house for Christmas, so I wore a pair of clothes that was just for in their house, and I changed in the garage and we went somewhere because you got to respect it's their dog, it's their animal, it's their house. But one thing I got a question for you. Again, we just kind of go off topic.
I always find
is like you say, people they call their kids their dogs, right?
Yeah.
So when people's dogs just start sniffing your crotch and they just don't say nothing, and they're like, "Oh, he just wants to know you," or I think that's like if my kid came up to you and just started jumping in your lap and sniffing your crotch, you would like immediately want me to get my child, right? But you just let your dog just like violate me.
Right.
And is that normal? Like, oh no, that's just it's okay because it's like. What do you think of that? Like, how?
Right.
Where do you stand on that?
It is. I actually am big on you have control of your dog. So it is a big thing that I talk to my classes about because I have people who come into classes and let their dogs go greet every other dog. And some of those dogs don't want to be greeted either. Like, just like we don't want to be greeted.
Right.
And I use that example. I'm like, I don't want a stranger coming up and hugging me. I was in a store just this weekend on the holiday weekend, and it was a little kid. He didn't know whose legs were who. So, but he grabbed my thigh. He was a little kid. He thought I was mom's legs, and I looked down and I said, "Wrong legs." And the parents were like, "Oh my gosh, and they corrected it. But they were actually, trying to help him, and it was a tight store. But in a normal situation, if a kid just comes and runs up on me, I'm like, okay, I don't, don't climb on my
So I'm not tripping, right?
No, I think, but the problem is a lot of humans, it's like they think this about their children too, but they think with their dogs, they're like, oh, it's a dog, it's fine. I'm like, no, I don't want, when I go hiking, my friend who I hike with, she's like, oh, cute dog, every dog. She stops and sees a dog, I just keep walking. Yeah. And she's like, but I'm like, I see them every day, and I don't think that dog really wants me to greet him either most of the time. So just keep walking, just like you would any other person. You can smile at them, you can look at them. I mean, just like if I'm walking by somebody.
Hope you guys are listening.
But but other dogs don't want to be greeted face to face with a dog, and that can cause a fight, or that can be fearful to another dog. Like if that's the puppy, and this big dog scares them because it just wants to say hi. Its intentions aren't there to hurt them, but the puppy's like, that was scary. Now that puppy, as an adult, may become afraid of other dogs because people didn't manage their dogs. And dogs should be under control, just like kids should be under control.
Right. So when I talk about this, because I say I'm just cautious around dogs. That's the term I use, right? Because I try not to say I'm scared of anything but the IRS and the DA. They're the only things that really scare me. And I'm just cautious because I was bit as a kid, and there's like people come up with all these scenarios like, well, they know that you're afraid, and they're like, hey, I was 5. There was a big old kid chasing me. Yeah, I'm gonna run.
Yeah.
And it bit me. And the November bit, get all loud about this part because I ain't scared of nothing, right? But I'm just cautious because you never know what an animal, or they're gonna protect their owner. Like when we're strangers in their house at pest control, like I always request, like, can you just put your dog away? I don't go in your backyard, just on the precautionary tip, because you never know how they're gonna protect their owner, their residents. I've been by plenty of little dogs that jump up and just nick your fingertips, and they never want to like comply. You know what I'm saying? And then when we're in pest control, you get bit, you get drug tested. Like it's your fault that you went in the backyard, right?
Right.
But I remember one time I think a lady canceled or didn't want me back because I wouldn't do her backyard without her dog. She wanted her old tech
Right.
dog was back, and it's like I just don't feel comfortable with a big old. I've had a dog jump like again because some are you can tell right like a golden retriever. Like there's a few that I did go into, but for
Right.
the most part, I just think it's
I think it's
interesting
just
that people don't. Yeah,
they're not respectful
yeah.
of that. My dogs are always good with people, but if I have a service person, I put them away.
But you put that on cautious, right, versus being scared, right?
Yeah,
Instead,
I mean,
scared.
you also have, some trauma around it.
That's what we got to.
but
Was I
that's fine.
traumatized?
But
maybe.
But you're also being smart, cautious. I have a client who, I have clients who their dog barks at the mailman, and some of them lose mail service because they will not contain their dog. And I give them all these things of ways, and some of them are just like, well, you can just bark at the mailman. I'm like, well, then you're gonna have to pick your mail up at the mailbox, because I can't blame mail carriers have the same situation. A lot of them have been bit, and a lot of them,
That's like as old as time, though, right? The mailman and the dog.
True. Right.
Since like Tom and Jerry, right? Always,
So-
like there's always been. So that's how.
But yeah, but it's
like 50
all
years of-
anybody who comes, even like I go into my clients' houses, they are calling me in sometimes because I have bit other people, they've fought with other dogs, and I go in, and depending, sometimes I have to ask them to be behind a barrier so I could go in, but I ignore the dogs and I sit down and I talk to the clients, and if some dogs, if I move, they would be on me, or they have to be on leash, because the dog is also scared oftentimes when
Right.
a person comes in. So
Do you think it goes back because of maybe people that this style that you're saying about these dogs engaging and getting like kind of like familiar with people and other dogs, right? We're gonna know people that don't want the dogs around people or anybody because they do use them more as like a security and protection, right? So you have different training styles, right?
you can, yeah.
So if you have somebody that didn't know that, their frontal lobe and their development of them growing, they've just nurtured their puppy, might be different again on how that animal acts when somebody does come over, right? Because they've never had a lot of engagement, right? So they're, you know what I mean? Like
So they're actually fearful a lot of times, because all
or maybe
dogs,
they're just cautious too, right? The same term, right? Versus using that word fear, scared.
well, and it's fear, anxiety, and stress. So it like sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's just anxiety. Like I can have anxiety without having fear,
do you think, though, that if
and
they
then
were-
I can be stressed without having anxiety and fear, or I can have all three.
But do you think I was saying, I guess, like that's less in animals that go through like this type of training where they're accustomed to people and other animals, right?
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a loaded answer,
Okay.
because genetics can be part of that. So
It's like Chihuahuas, why they always bark. Like
yeah,
genetically, they
Chihuahuas.
just-
Because Chihuahuas are, especially, they're so inbred and they got overbred, and Taco Bell did no favors for Chihuahuas, because everybody, and if you go to the shelters, Chihuahuas and Pit Bulls are often not as much currently, but usually those are the biggest population in shelters. But Chihuahuas get away with what they do because they're small, but they will bite. And a lot of times they're biting because they're scared, or they're cautious, or they're fearful, or they're anxious when someone comes in the house, if they're not used to
They
that.
do seem a little territorial for sure, right?
It's not always territorial, but if you think about they're small, genetically, a lot of them behave the same way. I have met Chihuahuas who are not afraid of everything, who don't shake constantly, but that's further
Again,
between.
Yeah. I don't mean to sound ignorant on this part.
know.
I grew up in the hood.
Right.
So like the dogs we got, like them Chihuahuas was afraid of nothing. They walked the street, you leave your door
Do you
open,
wanna know-
and they were out again. Or pit bulls, like we have like
Right.
maybe the way we breed our dogs and we keep them, they are for security, right? Like somebody's there. We leave them in the backyard. We don't kennel like that. It's just that when I go over the grade or different, and you say people these are their pets.
Yeah.
Like we're like, no, we don't let our dogs on the couch. Like these animals are from outside. Like culturally, is there?
There
Where I don't
could be-
see scared Chihuahuas, or you know what I mean, like versus people that their little pocket, their
Yeah.
lap dog and this type of thing, the way they raise them. Do you see anything like it's
The most brave Chihuahua, the most I say the most dog Chihuahua, because I think when they get like this,
The scrappy
they
breed?
aren't allowed to be dogs sometimes. Like when Chihuahuas
Sorry, would you
aren't.
like a water or something? Or you gotta
Oh, I
drink
get some.
it?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
dogs aren't allowed to be dogs sometimes. When they're purse dogs and they're all this, it's like
I don't mean to
saying
laugh. I got something to
it's
say.
like saying, like you're not allowed to do what you're supposed to do. You're not allowed to do boy things or girl things, or you're not allowed to do what's natural to you. And so when they get put in, and they get sheltered so much,
Yeah.
that oftentimes causes, I think, anxiety because they don't get to be who they are. But the
I'm still a
most
dog.
balanced,
I feel like a dog.
the most balanced Chihuahua I have ever seen was a horse farrier, because he took that Chihuahua everywhere from the time she was little. So she was around horses, she was around the ranch, she ran with Australian Shepherds like she was one of them,
Yeah.
and it was,
Where was that?
it was
Like Ohio or something?
it was in Ohio. It
Yeah, I
was
figured.
I actually still remember her. She has passed now since, but she was the best. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a Chihuahua who actually knows she's a dog and gets to be a dog and enjoy her life as a dog, you know,
Did they
and
have a cool
not
name?
be like, I can't remember her name
Yeah, so I
now.
could have some
Yeah,
cool
I
name
can't
too,
remember
right?
her name anymore, but it was a long time ago. But it was really, you know, when you see dogs that get to be who they're meant to be, but when we coddle them all the time, and I have a lot of clients who, you know, they carry their dogs everywhere. They do, you know, put them, and I'm like, it's not, you've got to let dogs be dogs. I think dogs need to be dogs. And with your pit bulls, I can tell you, I always like to tell this story because pit bulls get such a bad rap. And when I lived in Napa as a vet tech, we had more aggressive golden retrievers than we did pit bulls. Yeah.
Are Dalmatians really one of the most? I heard they were the ones they go deaf or the
They're
males or
deaf.
something like that. But I
They're
heard
deaf.
those are one of the most.
They go deaf because of genetic mutation. Again, irresponsible breeders are not the only cause of this, but it's a big cause of why we have dogs who have problems, because they just put two dogs together. They're not thinking about the mental part of it. There was a study in the 30s that I think is fascinating. It was foxes, so they were getting fox coats, and the foxes were really nasty. So they started to breed only the nice foxes together, and so then eventually they had all their foxes that they were using for their skin, but they were all nice, so they were easy to handle. That's why they wanted them, because people were getting bit. But what happened to the coat is the coat started looking more like dogs, and they were not good quality for a coat or a jacket. And so we know the way dogs look, part of the external genetics, is affected by the internal genetics. We just don't fully understand why, but a lot of times breeders are just caring about the looks. So they want the pit bull with the big head. Well, that could be awesome, because I've met pit bulls with big heads that are big goofs. But if that pit bull with the big head is also shy and fearful, or shows signs of even not aggression, just shyness, that can be passed on to the pups. And so now they have the big head, but they also have exposed more shyness. So
We're gonna change the name of the Wizard. I just wrote that down right now because you seem to know so much about the interior, exterior.
you know, it's the science, the brain, it's the vet tech, it's the, and I'm getting my master's now. I'm going towards an applied animal behaviors.
Okay,
That's
the
what
Wizard.
I'm working
Yeah,
towards.
that's the Wizard. I want to see you at the chamber. So again, if people are when I first hear what you do, right? First thing I think is, I don't know if you get this or not, and this isn't trying to be insulting or
No,
anything. Is it like the Caesar Million type of a thing? And and sometimes I would refer to him with our guppy program. I call it the Caesar Million because I thought the kids, when I brought my kids out to help volunteer, it showed the other kids like, oh, I could cut fish and I could hook my bait, right? It was like a peer-to-peer. They just felt more comfortable. So I guess it's two questions, right? Is that a blind to say that to you and be like, oh, you're kind of like that when you have your science, or do you train like that? And then does that method, is again, without going in on what he does,
Totally.
Something that you do, or is, groups and isolated, or somebody has a trouble dog, you could do all that. I guess I'm trying to brighten, for our listeners to see where you think of that or stand at it. Is that fair to make that comparison to you? Is yours a different way? Because I know his thing was he did maybe use a little bit more, like you said, the aggression, right?
Yeah.
And
he has a very different style, and it's not science based. So he just has his own methods that he's learned. So which is paired with
Didn't mean
shock.
to cut you off,
It's
sorry.
paired with a shock collar. He uses shock, he uses pinch, he uses chokes, he uses treadmills to exhaust dogs, so then they will behave differently. Dogs have died on the treadmill. There's a lot of stuff. So when you tell a positive force-free trainer that they're like Caesar Milan, I don't get insulted, because I don't get insulted very easily. And I understand where you're coming from, because you just don't know.
Right.
But people who know, it's like, some dog trainers back, I am not like him.
Right.
I take it as an opportunity to educate the differences. So Caesar has been approached by veterinary behaviorists to increase his knowledge on science, and he pushes back. And I'm friends with some of these behaviors, so I know this happens.
And this is no shot to him.
No,
I'm just that the
no,
viewers,
it's just,
this
yeah.
might be the only
Totally.
visual aid that we have when we think about, for some of us, is like
Exactly.
is a dog trainer.
And the
you
good
know?
thing is that he did bring dog training into light, and that dogs need training, and and National Geographic did a great job of that part. Like, dogs do need training and they need it. But it's just like old school how we treated kids, like we don't slap them with the wrist at the ruler in class anymore, and we do things.
Should
so
we?
we've learned
There's a ruler right there, Scotty.
we've learned that, and those old school methods, I mean, I used a choke chain when I was in high school because that was the only thing I knew. And then I was able to learn the better methods, the more improved methods, just like everything. I mean, we wouldn't go to the doctors in, the 1800s use leeches if you had a fever. Like, we don't do those things anymore because we've learned, right?
Evolution.
Yeah, we've learned. And that's why my book is called The Evolution of Dog Training, exactly for that reason, because it has evolved.
She has a book too. Hear that? Go ahead and shoot that out, or shout that out one more time.
Yeah, Evolution of Dog Training, and it's on Amazon. Yeah, and the reason I wrote it was talking about 100 years ago we started using choke chains. When in the World War II, German Shepherds, World War I, they were starting to use dogs in the war, so they used force. And then we had things like fancy people like Pavlov and Skinner who started showing
Wizard, I'm telling you, she's fascinating.
science that we could use positive force, different fancy words, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, which is a whole nother level, but it teaches you how to teach them in positive ways. So we've known this for a very long time. It's just not as sexy and fancy, but so it's evolved over time. So when someone says you're like Cesar Millan, I say, well, I'm a dog trainer, but I do different methods. And I teach the dogs what I want them to do and what I expect them to do in the environment, rather than constantly punishing them for doing the wrong thing when they don't know what the right thing is. So now, as far as group stuff, most of the stuff, and there's some things like Cesar talks about, he talks about alpha, which has been a debunked theory for a long time, almost 100 years. It's been debunked that we don't need to use alpha as not a thing, because dogs know us as humans and they know dogs as dogs. So within a dog pack, there's an alpha, but not human to dog. And so he uses those theories. But sometimes it is the owner just needs to actually be educated on how to manage a situation. Sometimes owners inadvertently train the wrong behavior. Dog barks at them to get a cookie, and they say, what do you want? And they go get a cookie. Well, the dog just learned, if I bark at you, I will get a cookie. So, we have to change the human's behavior sometimes. But there are incidences when other dogs can teach other dogs. And you have to carefully choose this when it should happen, because you want dogs. My dog who just passed was a very good teacher when he was young. And I could put dogs who just needed to know, like how to be good with other dogs, because he was very tolerant, but he would gently correct puppies if they were being out of control, but not aggressively. And other dogs can teach other dogs. You can have a huge fight if you put the wrong dogs together, though, because if they're not all well balanced, one can cause react to one, and then the other one reacts, and then you can have kind of that gang mentality where they'll all start fighting too. So where they all
Gang
just jump
mentality.
in. So
Gotta
that,
dump a dog.
yeah. But where everybody just jumps in.
Yeah.
Like that kind of situation.
So you could hear that she has all this knowledge about your animals, and from their puppy stage up. Do you work with any dogs that have been rescued that might have some of these fears and kind of
all the
getting
time.
that,
Yeah.
and it's interesting, some of the stuff you say, the traumatic in these people, I see some of the same traits in human beings. And sometimes I say that, right? If you did science, you could tell, if you put somebody in a cage for so long, or mistreatment, right? You could see how you break their spirit,
right,
to some degree. And I see that in people, and even with parents, the ones that coddle too much now, right? Okay, we can't hit them with the stick, but then, now we're coddling them way too much, and you got sanitizer on everything too, right? And now they don't have any immune system, and now they don't work around other people. You keep them all isolated,
right.
So we could see
The balance,
how things shift and go.
And some misunderstanding that people think about force-free dog training is it means we just let dogs get away with everything. And that is absolutely not
You have
true.
a little thing for little treats? You have a little fanny pack?
I have a fanny pack that I
yeah.
have with treats when I'm training, but I also do things like if I don't want my dog jumping on the kitchen counter, because this has come up before. They're like, well, force-free dog trainers just let them do whatever they want. No, there's a lot of management that goes into force-free training.
Is that a style? So there's
Force-free, positive training, like positive reinforcement and positive punishment. That's part of that operant conditioning that we could talk about for 100 years. So, but that's positive force-free, but force-free is like the next level of positive reinforcement, because you can have positive reinforcement with also using punishment. So there's people called balance trainers where they'll use a choke chain sometimes and they'll correct the dog for doing something wrong, but then they give them a piece of cheese when they do something right. What I find the biggest problem with balance trainers is timing. So you have to be precise on your punishment. So it has to happen as the dog is doing the behavior you don't want you'd have to punish. Almost no human has that kind of, because you don't know ahead of time what they're going to do. So you're almost always behind the 8 ball. So they bark, and they barked 5 times, and then you're trying to punish them. And
what are the dogs supposed to bark?
Well, if they're barking inappropriately, like if somebody,
like my neighbor, they'd be like the little dog in the back. Like,
or another example is sit. They sit. They'll tell them sit. They don't even give them a chance to process it. The dog's in the movement of sit, and then they pop them. So then the dog's like, okay, was I not supposed to do that now? And then they'll say sit, and then they'll like delay, and then they'll give them a treat. It just gets very confusing because the waters get very muddy, because humans aren't good at, like, if you could punish exactly as the dog was doing it with the exact amount of, because you don't want to over punish because then you're traumatized. You don't want to be at too much or else they get desensitized to it. It's a very special, nuanced trick.
Was that a Rubik's Cube?
No, yeah,
I think it is a Rubik's Cube. She knows how to put her yellows to her reds. And yeah, if you can figure out this Rubik's Cube.
You know how I did Rubik's Cubes when I was a little kid? I took the stickers off because we had stickers. And then I just put them back on. I did not do them. But so you have to be really careful. So if I say positive force free, it means, okay, my dog, I'm not going to force my dog into things, but I'm going to let them go at their own pace. But I'm going to manage the environment so that they don't get themselves into trouble. So like if they're getting into the garbage when I'm not home, I'm going to put the garbage in a closet, or I'm going to put it up so they can't do that behavior when I'm not there. Then when I'm home, I'm going to teach them to leave it. I'm going to teach them, when they ignore it, I'm going to reward them so they can learn that I don't want them to touch the garbage, but I'm not going to let them fail over and over and over again.
Is there something that you tell, again, let's say, getting back to the, traumatized dog that somebody went and adopted, right? And getting to know them again. Is there a certain time that you give them? I know my son's dog went to, let's say, corporate training 3 times, and Coco still hasn't trained up. But is there a time that you get, depending on if you got a scenario, like, okay, this is going to take about, how long you work with an animal and an owner, depending on the scenario type of a thing, you give them that when they sit. Because the reason right now, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I want them to kind of know your people that are listening that have ideas and they have a pet. And this is pretty much all dog, right? Even though you say it's pet,
I say animal training because I can work with horses. I don't teach how to ride horses, but groundwork, how to handle your horse if you're having a problem behavior with your horse. Cats, same thing, cats, if there's cat behavior problems, even bird behavior problems. But that's why I say animal training.
Okay.
But primarily I do dog training because that's what most people need. And so I will train any dog. So you can come from the shelter, they can be puppies or anything. You can inherit it from a family member. And then we just take it where that dog is. So like obviously puppies were more worried about socializing, but a dog from a shelter, there's a rule of thumb, although I think that it says 3 days. It's like they're kind of in shock for the first 3 days because they're like, oh my God, I'm in this new place. 3 weeks to kind of adjust and 3 months to fully adjust. Some dogs will follow that rule. Some dogs do not. Some dogs, it takes a year for them to fully adjust. If I work with somebody right when they get it from the shelter, we start wherever the dog is and where the human is. And so we might be just starting to create a schedule or a routine. We start teaching some basic behaviors. If the dog's super easy to learn and eager to learn, then I will teach them more complicated things. If they are more scared and fearful, then we work on the fear part or the getting accustomed to the new house. So that's where the one-on-one comes on. Not one of my one-on-ones is ever exactly the same. There can be overlap, but there's always, because the humans are different and the dogs are different and the environment is different. So, but I'll work with those. And sometimes I have some dogs who come from the shelter. The local animal shelter is starting to pay trainers to help get those
I was going to ask
difficult
you
dogs.
that, right? Do you like have some stuff there where they say, hey, now you're getting a dog, you might want to call the wizard?
If they have difficult dogs, say if they have some dogs that have been in the shelter for years or very long periods of time, and they have behavior problems. Some of them bite people. They're afraid. They've been in a cage. They've been in jail for God knows how long. So the shelter has some funding to pay me or other trainers to have these dogs come to us, and we work one-on-one, and then we just work what they are. Some of these dogs have medical issues though that have been not diagnosed because they've been in the shelter for so long. That's one benefit of me being a vet tech, is I'll be like, I think your dog needs to go to a vet before we keep working on behavior, because if they've got pain, arthritis, or they've got something, maybe that's why they're biting you when you pet them, because they hurt. So I will incorporate that into it. But I do, so yeah, any spectrum.
So if you're listening, right, it sounds like you do an assessment, right, to see where they're at. Everything from, again, working your way up. So I'm thinking about getting I want a dog that's like unbreadable, if that makes sense. How do I say that? Like, you ever see dogs, like some on the pier, we're like, how did you get that? They're like these little cool looking dogs,
you just want
right?
a mutt?
Yeah. Like just a little one that can make it up to the bed. Maybe I'll let him on the couch, you know? I'm thinking about
There's
it.
lots of mutts.
I travel a lot, but I want one like a little Scrappy Doo looking little dog, you know what I mean? Like, I got to get my vision. I wanted like I did like the mini pits, but I have a little bungalow house, so like space. So I don't know if I'll get it
Sometimes mixed breeds are better too,
but those
because
little like
purebreds have more genetic health issues sometimes, where you get a
I
mixed
want one to look
breed.
like he'd been through some things like me. You know what I mean? Like he looked like he was down to roll.
I'm sure you can find a couple at the shelter.
Just like, let's just walk the beach. We ain't got to put them on. He just like, because I seen them and they just like strut. You know, they strut when they walk.
Yeah, and that's one thing I do tell people. Just like every human is unique and has different personalities, every single dog on this planet has its own personality and its uniqueness. So you could put 10 golden retrievers in the room, and all 10 of them will have some differences. Some will have some similarities because but then you'll have, I have some outliers that they're the aggressive ones, or they're the super fearful ones, or they're the ones that don't like people.
There's one in every litter, one in every batch. So, okay, I got one last question before you. Okay, so check it out. It's truly force-free animal training. The wizard, Shannon Riley, right? The networking guru as well. So you can tell she takes care of business. She knows her information. You got this down to a science. Is there what about any dog, like the biggest dog, or a dog that you've seen where you're just like, this big old massive something or another is just, you had to work with anything that stands out, like the biggest dog? Because I like to watch those from Instagram. I think some of those dogs are beautiful. Those big old Tibetan mastiffs or something. They're just like, man, they bred something like that up there?
Yeah, I have worked with some multiple different mastiffs, and they're big. Mastiffs, if they are genetically balanced, can be really sweet puppies, and then by 2, they're total couch potatoes. Like that's a truly healthy mastiff is like a couch potato once they are hit adulthood. And then Great Danes are always interesting. Great Danes, I've had them in my house.
Cool.
Those are a pain though, because they walk up to your kitchen counter and they're like, hi. And that's not because they're jumping up. It's just because their chin hits your kitchen counter. And
they just look smooth and sleek too, and they strut. And Scooby's a Great Dane, right?
Yeah.
I think he's a Great Dane.
But the one thing is they don't have a very long lifespan. The bigger the dogs like that, 8 to 10 years is all you get with them. And so for me, I want a medium to a large breed, and I love Jack Russells and Labs. Those are my 2 favorite
breeds. Jack
breeds.
Russell's ones that tear up rats?
They can.
Are those ones? I know they use those on terriers, and they go out and help with like pest control. They
can
dig up and.
That's what they were bred for in
ones?
England. One of their terriers in general, but Jack Russells are one of them. Yeah.
Okay, I think I have one more question.
Okay.
Is it true? Because I started thinking about when you're talking about middle-aged dogs or a couple months old. I'm like, okay, so really they're like 2 now. So is it really 7 years?
So that's it's kind of a silly thing, but the first year of a dog's life, I always tell people, by a year we consider them adults. So in human world, we would consider them 18. So that's why they develop so much between birth to a year. They grow, their brain changes. So this every 7 years is not totally accurate, just because the first year is a lot of development. They go from newborn to being an adult in about a year. So, and then after that, it slows down a little bit. And I think I don't really pay that much attention to that kind of stuff because it is what it is. But I think they're trying to change it, and
they should have you in on that. I think you're special. I think anytime you guys do any more research and science, that you invite the wizard Shannon Riley into it. That's the geeky part. That's what I like. I think everybody should be a geek in their own world.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm a geek in nature. I'm a geek to something like in fishing. I think there's some geeks that are like, oh my God, you got the Triton 3507.
Yeah.
I'm not that geeky.
Yeah.
I got a fishing reel and some hooks and some
right.
and some bait. But but like the gym, I do like to geek out on stuff. I think everybody that does. I think if you listen to what your heart tells you, you could geek out on it. Totally. Is what you should be doing.
And I love biology, obviously, and I love medicine, and I love psychology. And probably one of my biggest regrets, because I didn't have good guidance when I was my age, when I was young, going to college. I loved the psychology classes I took as electives. And now, if I look back, I should have double majored. I should have gotten a biology degree.
Another master's. How many got now? 4?
Psychology. I should have double majored, and that because I could have used it later, because I think and dog psychology and animal psychology is very, very similar to humans. I mean, our brains are very similar. They're developmentally very similar. They just can't talk. And
I used to say, because I do, again, the world I lived in, right, deals with incarceration,
right,
growing up, and I'm like, if for science, you could see how if these animals act like this when they're in solitary confinement in this rate, right? You have an idea how this is going to affect this human being, and then when you let it go, right, or let them out, you know what I mean to say, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've looked at it as a comparison, or even like to say where, in a relationship domestically where somebody's been broken and they hide in the back of the cage, right?
Right.
And that for them to have that trust to come out. So I'm not a doctor, but I thought to look at it to see and then even some people, again, like the individual that I was engaged to, like some stuff where they feel like animals are the only thing that like they connect to with animals, right? Like they have this connection with something that because they feel it. So
it is an interesting thing because dogs have it, and I have seen this because I'm also passionate about human trauma, and I do talks
that'll be on episode 2
on red flags and stuff like that, of dating and stuff like that.
I seen that. I zoomed in on it one day. I was like,
but
I think trauma. Does she have any?
I'm fascinated with trauma of dogs and people for personal and experience from work that I work. And there are some dogs who can be in that shelter for a long time and come out just because they're more genetically resilient. And they can come out just like humans.
I just did a little time.
Just like humans, like there are some humans who have really bad things happen. They, and they can come out and change their life. And then other people struggle harder to get their feet on the ground, just like some dogs struggle more after being in the shelter. And I think there's a lot of research that could be done around like how our brains
I want to get on that. Let me show you this right here, right?
Trauma.
Because I hear that a lot from my kids and people, right? So here's these 2 crutches. Right, and I did my own class, and I have blame and excuse right here, right? And I put them on this little. Let me get over here, right? So I got these 2 little crutches, right, that I limp around on, right? Blame and excuse, like what happened to poor little Kev, the little foster kid, and lived in women's shelters and blah 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 blah, right? And I feel like I get not everybody's like me because I feel like I'm one of the ones that snap back and be like, I've been in foster care, I've done it, so. Sometimes I talk to my kids, about cold heart, because they'll give me some stories and say something, and I'm like, I just don't, I reject some of that. Right. So that part, right? Like some of us, I guess, just come out like a little brush up, and we're good to go. And
I mean, I've had, when we do our second episode about trauma, like I've had a lot of trauma. I'm actually writing a book about that too. It's just taking me a little longer to do after my boating accident. But I've talked about trauma, and my friends tell me all the time, like, because I'll be like, I don't understand why some people, can't get over this. And even though I say it in an empathetic, compassionate way, but my friends tell me, like, you are here, like in achievement land and in resilience land, and the rest of the world is down here. So I have a lot of compassion that I realize not everybody can brush it off like I can. I'm a very big fall down and get back up person. But some people fall down and they have to stay down a little longer, and that doesn't mean that
some
anything's
people
bad.
I'm like, look, I'm down. Look, I'm down.
Right.
Look, I'm down. Like,
and then there's oftentimes layers of trauma to that is why they're that, whether it's genetic or childhood stuff. But yeah, so that's what I love. That is another. You could
I
get
wanna
me
get on
on
that.
for
Yeah, I
another.
wanna
We
work-
could talk for
we-
another
we will,
2
'cause
hours about
I do that, right?
trauma.
Because I talk about it, right? And when I tell people from it, because I go to God a lot,
yeah.
right? And who He could use, and the different stories in the Bible that show people that have been through those experiences and how you could still be, like we did this rod building, right? That you can be broken, damaged, and still be useful, right? So you start over there broken and you're traumatized, and those are right next to the crutches. So we have these little exercises to show that you don't have to be broken forever, right? And whether you do or not. So that's something I'm really passionate about. I see my mom up there, manic depressant, eating pills until she died, right? And watching her traumatic experiences. And so I don't speak from this from just some tough it up guy. Like, I just know I used to use those crutches. I'm a product of my environment. Like, I let them, institutions try to brainwash me into believing that, and I see how they utilize that and leverage that. But again, sometimes they're like, nobody's like you, Dad, and you're just, me and my daughter, and like, because I have an empathetic side too, but I also have, my dad died when I was 6, so I don't do funerals. I don't really cry. Do I mourn? Like, what does that fix? Like, and people are like, well, you need to look into that. I'm like, I don't know. Like, what things are going to let affect my mood too? Like, there's other things, right? What do I control? And what I let other people's power over me control? Right. And that's something I learned in church, right? Like, I'm mad at these people, and that's why I had to learn how to forgive, because otherwise they still got power and control over me, and we ain't even hanging out no more. Right. I'm really giving away that much power.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that's episode 2.
Yeah,
that's
we'll
called
talk
a cliffhanger.
about trauma
that's called
and how it affects you, and then as you get older, it affects your dating and your relationships. So it's all.
I date myself. Happy Valentine's Day, Kevin.
But they are, and I'm passionate about both, because I think and traumatized people sometimes have traumatized dogs, so I have to tread that really lightly.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yes, I have to tread that very carefully on both ends.
Okay, we're gonna leave you guys there. That's another hour. Look, we went home 51 minutes. That's good. So check her out. And the reason we got to cut it off, I got to go teach class. I got to leave here to go to Carpinteria
Website
school.
and socials?
Trulyforcefree.com, and then we have Instagram, so Facebook, TikTok. So if you go to trulyforcefree.com, you will find all of our connections to socials as well.
And podcast?
And podcast is called Backyard Pet Talk with Shannon Riley, and it's also on, you can get a link to it on the website as well. And Evolution to Dog Training is my book, available on Amazon, and it's I have it audio, so I actually over COVID recorded it, which was a big undertaking, and then it's in Kindle as well as paperback.
I don't think I've smiled through a whole podcast like that in a minute, man. That was pretty good stuff. You know your stuff. You're passionate. You talk about, the hustle. I've seen you work, that's why we find cool stories to highlight, and you seem like the people that are just always in the mix for positiveness and your craft. And I think you spend a lot of time in your craft and telling people that too. But again, that's because we're nerds with it, or what I say, geeks about it, right? So you're just like really truth of the pudding that we talk about. Those that are going after their dreams or their passions, man. I think you have it all, plus your personality, your own life experiences on how it ties into your work.
Oh, totally.
You could tell. So it's really cool to have you today as an interview.
Thank you.
The Wizard. I said it right. You heard it here first on Real Radio with Community Kev and Barry. That's going to do it. Scotty will put up some plugins over over everything. And again, so whenever we leave, we like to leave with a motivational moment.
Okay.
You could tell people, like, either on their grind or if they're traumatized, or we just give them a little sound advice.
I love what you said about following your dream, because I could have done my passion. I could have burned out on my passion because it wasn't straight and linear. So I learned how to be where I am by just trying new things, and believing in yourself. And I have a lot of faith. Some people ask me, how do you get through all your stuff? And I have a lot of faith in God as well. So
Amen.
But yeah, just keep don't give up on your dreams, because if you keep working towards them, they'll happen.
I'm gonna start preaching. Like, a little bit of faith goes a long, long way, right?
Does.
Again, just kind of like that trust.
I even have my tattoo. I have my faith tattoo.
I got my cross. I say those are Port Hueneme pier pylons.
There you go. I have my faith tattoo to remind me if I forget.
But that right there, no, faith, man. If you have faith and trust, I think those are kind of the two keys. Trust in yourself, have faith, whether it's in God or your God. I don't bang everybody to, hopefully you're good or you'll go. I don't go that route on this heavily, but you got to have some type of faith in yourself and, in your purpose.
And empathy and compassion, that's in my mission statement.
That's why she is force-free, is aggression versus aggression. Yeah, you got it dialed in.
Yeah.
That's neat. Man, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so check it out. All right, Barry, let's get out of here, man. I'm going to keep on yapping. All right, we'll see you for volume 2 about trauma and such. All right, let's go.
Today's guest, Shannon Riley, animal trainer and behavior consultant with Truly Force-Free Animal Training. To learn more about Real Guppy Outdoors, please visit www.communitykevin.com. Brought to you by AFTCO Fishing Apparel and Tackle, designed to perform. Channel Islands Sport Fishing, offering deep-sea fishing on quality sport fishing charter boats, and more. Costa Sunglasses. Discover life's greatest adventures with Costa. See what's out there. Daiwa. If you want innovation and quality in your fishing products, Daiwa has what you need. This has been a Rough Edge Studios production.